Did you know that Sandy Hook was a staged event where no children died? That the school had been closed since 2008 and there were no children there? 13 experts, including 6 PhD, current or retired college professors, proved that it was a 2-day FEMA drill presented to the public as a real event. We even have the manual. There was a rehearsal on the 13th, going live on the 14th. Some participants became confused and put up donation sites the day before. Even the shooter was recorded as dying before the event. You have been played by Eric Holder and Barack Obama. Now Hillary wants to extend the deception by posing as a champion of Sandy Hook to confiscate your guns. Don't let yourself be played. Nobody died at Sandy Hook.
If you want to get a grip on just what fake news is, then I'd suggest you get the book, Nobody Died in Boston, at patriotradiobooks.com. That's patriotradiobooks.com.
Welcome to the new JFK show number 149. All right, tonight we've got a presentation from Don Fox. We've also got Larry Rivera with a new blog post we're going to talk about. There's also a conference coming up, and we're going to talk about that as well. So we're going to, forgot to flip it. There we go. So we're going to get every grain of sand out of it that we possibly can.
I'm keeping the time digitally here too as well. So
you know that makes me upset when you use that smart. We're going old school, like it or not. Not everybody has to be staring at their phone. Okay. All right, Don. You said to have my bell ready to go.
Get that thing. Yeah, get her warmed up. Yep. Okay.
All right. So go ahead, Don. You're first, then Larry, then Jim.
Okay. So last week we were going over Larry's, the memo that Larry found here on the single bullet theory. So I thought maybe we'd go into who Messrs. Joseph Ball, David Belin, Melvin Eisenberg, and Norman Redlich, are. Yeah, 4 rings there. Yep.
I'm sorry, Don. Birth of the single bullet theory, because that's what the memo is. Birth.
Yeah, it is the birth of it. Yeah, where did this theory come from? Did it just?
Yeah.
Did it come out of the sky, or did some guys go in a room and figure this thing out?
It was more than just Arlen Specter, and these are the other guys that really made it to.
Well, Arlen was the junior counselor. It was his job to sell it, but these are the guys that created it. We're the senior guys. So.
All right, so Don, let's go ahead and say it together. The single bullet theory has to be the
greatest fraud ever
perpetrated on the American people.
Public.
Okay. One of. Go ahead.
Jerry and I often repeat that line in various conversations that we've had on the phone over the years. Okay, so I thought we'd start off with, so the first name on that list was Joseph Ball. Okay, and here's Mr. Ball.
A particularly nasty piece of work.
Woo! That was an understatement.
Yeah, and we'll just go over his bio here a little bit. This was from California's capital, so it's they had a lot of lawyer biographies there.
Yeah, he represented oil companies.
So, Joseph Ball was born in a small town in Iowa. He studied law at Creighton University, received his law degree from the University of Southern California, and built a prominent law firm. Although he sometimes refers to himself as a country lawyer, he is known among his colleagues for his incisive legal mind and ability to cut to the heart of complex legal problems. Renowned for his skill in the courtroom, he has been called a legend. Mr. Ball served as president of the California State Bar in 1956 and 57. and later as a staff counsel to the President's Commission on the Assassination of President Kennedy, locally known as the Warren Commission. Among his numerous awards are the 1973 Shattuck Price Award of the Los Angeles County Bar Association, awarded to an individual who best exemplifies the high standard of the legal profession and the administration of justice. And the 1981 Learned Hand Award of the American Jewish Committee's Institute of Human Relations, and the 1983 Litigation Award from the American College of Trial Lawyers. Jim, any thoughts on Mr. Joseph Ball?
Oh, I just know he was a very, very powerful influence in manipulating the outcome and affecting the witnesses. He played multiple roles here in making it come out the way LBJ wanted.
I see Larry over there like a horse in the stall ready to jump. Tell us about Mr. Ball, Larry.
Well, he represented oil interests, actually, for most of his career. And he was brought onto the Warren Commission by his good friend, Earl Warren. These people were from California. And Ball had his fingers in just about anything that was of importance in framing Lee Oswald. He was the architect of the doorway. He did more than I took a count, more than about 125 or maybe 140 depositions for the Warren Commission. And in just about each and every one of them, you can see the manipulation of this man. It's pathetic. I devote an entire chapter to this man in my book called The Chicanery of Joseph Ball. And even like, for example, the shell game, the shells that were found on the 6th floor. He did just so many crooked things on the Warren Commission. It's just nauseating.
And I was listening earlier, I think it was last night even. I was listening back to a debate Ball had with Mark Lane in December of '64. And I think for next week, we'll have some clips from that debate.
Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, he was one of the authors, I believe, of one of the chapters of the report itself, chapter 4, if I recall right, on framing, on framing Lee Oswald. He had an agenda, and he carried it on.
Yeah, sounds like a bell ringing debate there next week.
Yeah, it will be. Keep that bell warmed up.
All right, so
let's go to the.
David Belin. He was a real nasty guy, a pit bull. He'd viciously attack anyone who questioned any aspect of the Warren Commission report.
Yeah, this is David Belin, and this was his. This is from his New York Times biography. I guess. Well, it was kind of his obituary, I guess. David W. Belin, a lawyer for the Warren Commission, which investigated the Kennedy assassination, and for the Rockefeller Commission, which looked at Central Intelligence Agency activities. Yep. Died yesterday at St. Mary's Hospital of the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. He was 70 and lived in Windsor Heights, Iowa, and on the east side of Manhattan. Well, listen to this. Now, I think he died in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have that tab open anymore. But the cause of death was head injury sustained in a fall in his hotel room at Rochester, where he had gone for his annual physical checkup at the Mayo Clinic, said the editor of the Tribune in Ames, Iowa. After the fall, Mr. Belin was in a coma for 12 days. So that was kind of a untimely end. So he was also co-owner of the Ames Tribune with Mr. Gartner, a former president of NBC News and of other Midwestern publications. At his death, he was the senior partner in the Des Moines law firm of, get the bell ready, Belin, Lamson, McCormick, Zubach, Flynn. Oh, Gary took off. Okay.
Oh, sleeping on the job.
He worked in various areas of the law, including corporate law, litigation, and state law. In New York, he served as an advisor to wealthy families. He was described in an editorial written for today's issue of the Tribune as a moderate Republican who had no use for the far right wing of his party, far left. Mr. Belin was appointed by Chief Justice Earl Warren in 1964 to be the assistant counsel to the Warren Commission, whose formal name was the President's Commission to report upon the assassination of President Kennedy. The commission was created by the executive order of Lyndon B. Johnson and given broad powers. Mr. Belin concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald had worked entirely on his own as the president's assassin, and the commission's main finding was that speculation that conspirators or government elements were involved in the killing was false. In the final report, the commission affirmed that Mr. Oswald had acted on his own. And in his later years, Mr. Belin defended his work against those who criticized the investigation of the president's death, and his writings included 2 books about the assassination. The truth, he liked to say, was that all that was sought, and he remained adamant in his conviction that the truth had indeed been determined.
Telling us all that with a bow tie like that. Man, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, he,
That
again,
much power, and he wears a bow tie.
another nasty guy. And I got this picture off of, I did a Google search, and it comes off of our boy Ralph Sinkay's blog, the Oswald Innocence blog. So, courtesy of Ralph for digging this one up. I thought it was the best photo I could find of him.
It's a good photo.
Yeah, he looks pretty. He looks pretty nasty there, doesn't he?
Yeah, Meet the Press. I mean, that's been the most hardcore propaganda machine since day one, right? It's still on today.
Yeah, that's a nasty show. I can't watch it anymore. It's just
Meet the Press is as bad as it gets.
yeah, it's not good. Okay, so then we got okay, up next we've got Melvin Eisenberg.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and okay, so then this is from his Berkeley faculty webpage, so his bio from there. After graduating from law school, Melvin Eisenberg was with the New York firm of K. Scholler, Fearman, Hayes, and Handler. Ding, 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 ding.
Go ahead and take over the bell.
He also served as assistant counsel to the President's Commission on the Assassination of President Kennedy, also known as the Warren Commission, and as an assistant corporations counsel of New York City. He joined the Bolt faculty in 1966. Eisenberg is the author of The Nature of the Common Law in 1991 and The Structure of the Corporation, 1997. He has published case books on the subjects of contracts and corporations. He held the American Law Institute's Justice R. Ami Cutter Chair from 91 to 93. And he has been a visiting professor at Harvard University, a Guggenheim Fellow, and a Fulbright Senior Scholar. He was chief reporter for the American Law Institute's Principles of Corporate Governance. He is presently a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And since 1998, he's been the Justice W. Daugherty Professor of Law, Business.
He's still alive?
At Columbia. He's like a professor emeritus now. Eisenberg is also an advisor to the restaurant, or the restatement, third of agency and restatement, third of restitution. He is presently a consultant to the ABA's Committee on Corporate Laws. 1984, Eisenberg delivered the Cooley Lecture at the University of Michigan. He's also given lectures at a number of universities. Education.
Enough on Eisenberg.
Okay. Now, he graduated from Columbia in 56 and looks like Harvard Law in 59. Okay, so then
it's always Harvard and Yale.
That's where the elites come from. Okay, so here's Norman Redlich.
Wow.
This is also from the New York Times. He died. Oh, he did die in 2011. Okay, and I think was it Belin died in 99. I'm sorry. Yeah, and Joseph Ball. I'm not exactly sure when he did die though. Eisenberg is
2000. Joseph Ball died in 2000.
2000. Yeah. Okay. And so Redlich. Okay. Norman Redlich, a quiet luminary of the New York legal community who pioneered the pro bono defense of indigent death row inmates and who, as a staff member of the Warren Commission, helped develop the so-called single bullet theory to explain how President John F. Kennedy was killed by a lone gunman, died Friday at his home in Manhattan. He was 85. This is from June 11th, 2011, the New York Times. The cause of death was complications of Parkinson's disease.
Don, you just answered who is the unknown Warren Commission counsel who quietly about the single bullet theory going through both Kennedy and Connolly in the same memo. We're going to talk about it now, but you just answered our question. Who was or who could have been the one, because the person, the attorney is unnamed in the memo. Okay, but go ahead because that's very, very important what you just said there on Redlich, on him being one of the originators of the SBT.
Yeah, and okay, he was, as Dean of the New York University School of Law, Mr. Redlich sought to deepen the school's commitment to the training of public interest lawyers. He recruited the most renowned capital defense lawyer in the country at the time, Anthony G. Amsterdam, whose appointment as head of the school's advocacy program in 1981 received more press than Mr. Redlich ever did as dean. The low-profile work that would come to give Mr. Redlich his highest profile, however, was his appointment in 1963 as executive assistant to the Warren Commission's chief counsel, J. Lee Rankin. In that job, he and several other staff lawyers, including Arlen Specter, the future Pennsylvania senator, devised the single bullet theory, which explained how Governor John B. Connally of Texas and President Kennedy could have been struck almost instantaneously at one point without there having been a second gunman.
Pretty clever guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the widespread doubt cast on the theory in later years caused Mr. Redlich to tell a congressional subcommittee reviewing the commission's findings in 1977. I think there are simply a great many people who cannot accept what I believe to be the simple truth that one rather insignificant person was able to assassinate the President of the United States.
Right, coming from one of the master cover-ups of all, that's really something for him to make that assertion. The guy's got a lot of nerve.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo! I'm gonna have to cool my bell off there a little bit there, Don.
Yeah, so that, okay, so, I sent out an email, well, maybe about a year ago now almost, that I described the single bullet theory as being Jewish. Now, can anyone deny the fact Jews played a major role, if not a...
When it comes to the single bullet theory, it's the whole time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. So if you're going to talk about, well, it wasn't just Jews, well, who got the parade route changed? Who came up with the single bullet theory? Who took over? Who was on the Warren Commission?
No, who was the historian that wrote this all up?
There you go. So, I don't know. You want to comment for us, Dr. Fetzer?
No, I think you guys are covering the bases very well.
All right. All right, we're going to go on to Larry's most recent post called The Single Bullet Theory Smoking Gun Memorandum. So we're going to dig in right now.
Well, this is one of the most important memorandums ever discovered in JFK assassination research, because it lays out the entire process of how this ridiculous theory came about. Okay, and it obviously starts with the memo itself, where we briefly talked about this, I believe last week with Dave. But this meeting lasted 8.5 hours, Jim. 12764. They're in there from 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m.
DC Dave is revising his article because we sent him this memo. He let me know about that.
Yeah. But
very good.
Garrett, can you show the blog itself so we can read it? Because that's okay. There we go. There you go. Maybe Jim can do us the honor.
Why is this memo so darn important? Let's break this down. This memo tells us about a meeting that was celebrated January 27th, 1964, just a little more than 2 months after the assassination. According to the memo, the purpose of the meeting was to view the Zapruder and Nix films and try to figure out the shot scenario that killed JFK. Roll call. Representing the FBI were Leo Gauther and President Special Agent Lyndell Schoenfeld, who was the FBI's resident photographic expert. Harold Weisberg had his yellow eye on Schoenfeld. He believed this guy was as crooked as could be, and that he was one of the architects of the photographic deception prevalent in the JFK record. You can view some of Harold's work on Schoenfeld here. Harold even had him deposed for his civil suit of 3/29/77. That's right. It took Weisberg almost 14 years to get this guy to answer questions in a legal setting. He went as far as flat out calling him a liar. Representing the Secret Service were Inspector John Kelly and Secret Service Agent John J. Howlett. And in this corner, representing the Warren Commission, were Assistant Counsels Joseph Ball, David Belin, Norman Redlich, and Melvin Eisenberg. Who wouldn't have loved to be a fly on the wall for this one? These guys spent 8.5 hours in the same room trying to pound this round peg into a square hole. They must have reeked of BO and coffee. By definition, the FBI and Secret Service are law enforcement officers who are duly trained in the use of firearms and the effects of gunfire and ammunition. The Warren Commission lawyers, on the other hand, must have known absolutely nothing about ballistics. Their expertise in weaponry consists of words, oratory, and documents. Yet, on the second page of this memorandum, we encounter this incredible passage. One staff member, according to Inspector Kelly, quietly spoke about the outside possibility of a shot, of shot one, going through the president with sufficient velocity remaining to penetrate Connolly's body, wrist, and leg. Inspector Kelly mentioned this to me confidentially. He was of the opinion that this was a personal remark made on the spur of the moment. Shot two, under those ridiculous facts, would have gone completely wild, according to Kelly. A personal remark.
Pause. Isn't this incredible here? I mean, this is something that just defies all logic here, Jim. This is exactly the moment where they are thinking, wait, are we going to be able to push this on the American public, or how can we, bring this out?
Well, it defies logic. It defies logic to do. You understand their objective was to weave a scenario that could account for all the wounds on the basis of 2 bullets to preserve the illusion that Lee Oswald was the lone demented assassin. Then it all makes sense.
Yeah, because once you conclude that different shots hit Kennedy and Connolly, then you've got more than one shooter. And by definition, you have a conspiracy.
Go ahead.
A personal remark made on the spur of the moment. It is abundantly clear that the FBI and Secret Service scoffed at the idea of 1 bullet going through Kennedy and causing 5 different wounds to John Connolly, as, quote, one unidentified Warren Commission staff member quietly spoke about the outside possibility of this having been the case. Gauthier and Kelly characterized this scenario as ridiculous, where any bullet would have gone wild in its trajectory. Never mind that Connolly had more bullet fragments in him than could have come off a CE-399. Was Gauthier subtly telling us who was really responsible for making up the single bullet theory? Perhaps to document the charade for posterity? Bear in mind that Arlen Specter was later credited with creating the single bullet theory, was not even at this meeting, at least not officially. This personal remark made by an unnamed assistant counsel happens to be the theory which was seared into history by the Warren Commission. But wait, was there anyone in the Warren Commission who was interested in the truth? You bet. This one is even better.
Should I click here?
No, click. No, but that's to the original site where this document is, where you can find it. But the actual memo is here. This portion right here. But go ahead and click. There is Zapruder reviewing Eisenberg, because that's the entire PDF. I believe it's 3 pages, because this is a follow-up meeting to the one on 127. Okay, and in this meeting, guess who is the only Warren Commission representative there? It's Eisenberg. Okay, and we're gonna go through the portion of the memo now, but this clearly indicates that Eisenberg was not convinced at all about the single bullet theory, and he insisted on more information, and that's what we're gonna see here with this memo now coming up. This is a portion, the relevant portion of the memo, and I think this one is just fantastic here, because it's a follow-up. As you can see, January 29th, it's 2 days afterwards, okay? Apparently, and now that the Don has identified Redlich as the unidentified counsel, to approach Kelly, about the single bullet theory, now everything makes a lot more sense, okay? So go ahead. This is now 2 days later, and it's a follow-up meeting. Oh, and another thing, you can see here as this memo is being kicked up the chain of command, so to speak. Now, instead of Callahan and Gauthier being involved, now if you go scroll down, no, up, Gay, up. But no, right there, because I need to show you who these memos are to and from. Okay, Al Rosen, can you scroll down?
Gary, roll down just a little.
This way?
Yeah.
Mr. Bell, Mr. Rosen. We're going to find out who these guys are now. But rest assured that now what's going on here is that this is getting a little bit more serious, and it's approaching Hoover little by little. So go ahead.
You want me to read this part of the memo?
Just so where it starts, Mr. Eisenberg. We don't have to go.
Beginning Mr. Eisenberg?
Yeah, right there.
Mr. Eisenberg, who appears to be the principal member of the staff interested in the exact locations of where the shots were fired, I think he may mean where the shots hit, indicated that the staff of the President's Commission were all in agreement concerning the locations that had now been established based on the viewing of the Zapruder film. However, he stated that when comparing the Zapruder film with the film taken by Nix, there were certain objects which could not be reconciled, particularly at the point where it was believed the third shot was fired.
That's
Mr.
right.
Eisenberg pointed out that it was not a matter of questioning the measurements taken by either the Bureau or the Secret Service of the models that had been made, but rather to try and resolve the exact circumstances under which the Nix film was taken, so that there would be no possibility of allegations being made at a later date that the facts concerning the shooting were different than the President's Commission arrives at as being the correct situation.
Even today, Jim, because you have written about this in articles before, that the Nix and the Zapruder film, even though they tried to make it inside as much as possible, they were not able to do it entirely. Where we see the reaction of Jackie on the trunk of the limo is different from one film to the other. Am I right on that?
Yeah, and where Clint Hill, his behavior in relation to Jackie is different as well. So
right. Okay.
Are they saying that the Nix film and the Zapruder film actually need to be altered?
He's saying they aren't quite in sync. He's saying that.
So it's admitting an awful lot right there.
Yeah, that's very significant. I agree.
I mean, from somebody who was a member of the Warren Commission, this is astounding to me.
Well, I mean,
there were certain objects which could not be reconciled.
That's right.
I was going to say, okay, now is
Like the limo stop.
is there any wonder why the Nix film has been so hard to locate over the years?
That's right. Jones Harris saw a different version of the Nix film. In the 60s, and he said it's nothing like what it is today.
Really?
Yeah, you can hear. Hear Nick's talking to
I
Mark.
need to ask Jones about that. He calls me every now and then.
Jones saw a version of the Knicks which shows a guy standing on the bumper of a station wagon with a rifle behind the picket fence.
Can't have that.
Oh no, you can see that. You can see that in the present, Nick.
Well, in the ones that he saw, the version that he saw, it was clear as a bell.
Very good.
Go ahead,
Eisenberg apparently was unconvinced and suspicious of what his cohorts were trying to scheme. They succeeded. 2 days later, 1/29/64, he was brought in for a second viewing of the films. This memo shows how the FBI reacted to Eisenberg's reluctance to go along with a single bullet theory. It was kicked up the chain of command, so let's briefly identify the players. Alan Rosen, Assistant Director, FBI, and author of the memo. Alan Belmont, Assistant to J. Edgar Hoover, considered Hoover's top lieutenant and recipient of the memo. J.R. Jim Malley, Assistant Director, Alan Rosen's first assistant, liaison to the commission. For this meeting, Cheney felt was replaced with Jim Malley, and the result was reported up the ladder to Belmont via Rosen, with Belmont having Hoover's ear as his top lieutenant. The reader should immediately notice the compartmentalization shown here by the FBI, not unlike the Paul Cicero character played by Paul Sorvino in the mafia movie Goodfellas. Returning to our discussion of the passage shown above, it tells us all we need to know. Eisenberg appeared to be the principal member of the staff interested in the exact location of where the shots were fired. See, I find that phrase ambiguous, but we'll continue.
Jim, I wanted to clarify that he's talking about the in the Zapruder film itself. Okay, when he is referring to locations.
Yeah, he's talking about the shooter's location?
No. The spots in the Zapruder film, for example, 313.
Which frames?
Right.
The exact frames where the shots were fired.
Right.
Eisenberg appears to have been quite troubled by how Earl Warren and Alfred Goldberg were trying to rewrite history, and somebody made sure it was documented. But there's another important issue raised by this memo. Eisenberg rightfully points out discrepancy between the Z and Nix films. There were certain objects which could not be reconciled, particularly at the point where it was believed the third shot was fired. Note, despite all the tampering to both films, even today, we are able to discern inconsistencies between the two. So as early as January 1964, the Warren Commission attorneys working for Earl Warren knew that the truth was being suppressed. With the exception of Eisenberg, they appear to have actively participated in covering up the assassination of John Kennedy. And of course, the single bullet theory later found its official sponsor in Arlen Specter, whose pact with the devil enabled him to rise all the way to the top as a U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania.
For 50 years, we've had Arlen Specter, the single bullet theory. All right, so this is a good time to take a break. We're going to go to a commercial.
Almost done. The last paragraph.
Well,
Okay.
we'll come back after the break, Larry.
Well, what does this say about the Secret Service and the FBI, both of whom sat idly and allowed Ball, Redlich, and Belin to propose and endorse this abomination? Clearly, in this case, politics did not make strange bedfellows partners in crime. Did.
Yeah,
You want to pause here, Gary?
Yeah, it's time to take a break. We'll be right back. We're going to have to take a word on the new JFK book coming up this week. So everyone, hang tight. The book's coming out this week.
Did you know that the police in Boston were broadcasting, "This is a drill, this is a drill," on bullhorns during the marathon? That the Boston Globe was tweeting that a demonstration bomb would be set off during the marathon for the benefit of bomb squad activities, and that one would be set off in 1 minute in front of the library, which happened as the Globe had announced. That peering through the smoke, you could see bodies with missing arms and legs, but there was no blood. That the blood only showed up later and came out of a tube. That they used amputee actors in a studio-quality smoke machine. That the prosecution of the brothers, blaming them for the crime, was staged. Don't let yourself be played. Check out. And nobody died in Boston either.
Hi, this is Gary King. If you'd like to find out why the Boston Marathon is one of the most embarrassing, laughable hoaxes ever perpetrated on the American people, then go to PatriotRadioBooks.com. That's PatriotRadioBooks.com.
All right, we do hope you go to Patriot Radio Books or Moonrock Books pick up the new JFK. It's going to be coming out this week, and I want to thank everyone for signing up with our email list to on our subscriber list, and we promise the books will be out this week. All right, let's get back to our next thing here. Or we want to wrap up on this one?
No, it's good. If any, I think it was very well done there, and read by Jim, and the information here is something that's very disturbing.
Well, again, it's. I was watching our show, our JFK show number 84. If anyone's missed that, go back, and it gives kind of an overview of Jewish involvement, Mossad involvement in the
Permandex? The Permandex show?
Yeah.
No, this was the one we did December of 2015.
Okay.
And I talked about how Sam Bloom had gotten the parade route changed.
Yeah.
Abraham Zapruder, ding ding ding, filmed the whole thing. And, at the time we talked about how Jack Rubenstein shot Oswald in the basement, but after doing some shows with Ralph Sinclair, it certainly appears that Mr. Rubenstein was not the true assassin. So there's some doubt there.
Yeah, that has to be one of our biggest revelations in a very, very long time. And of course, with Lee being in the doorway is another one for sure.
Jeff Rentz last night raised a very interesting question about Zapruder perhaps being part of the entire operation. And
oh yeah. There's a lot of speculation about that.
There are no coincidences like that, Don. They take such a film like that, and be there at the right time, right place, at the right time.
He worked in the Dow Tex building, remember, and shots came from the uranium mining company, and perhaps on the third floor, the second floor of the Dow Tex building was the uranium mining company, and then on the third floor there was also broken glass. So the Dow Tex building is highly suspect.
Dirty.
Yeah, and it was owned by Jews.
You're gonna have to get your own bell.
Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah.
Well, tomorrow I fly to California for an event that will be held on Memorial Day, the 29th of May, 2017, which happens to be JFK's 100th birthday. It's nice to be, honoring his birthday. The focus, of course, will be on understanding the assassination, who was responsible, how it was done, and why. There's a rather good lineup. If you go to the next slide, Gary.
Oh, it's a slide? Okay. I didn't realize it was a slide. Okay.
Right. Here are the speakers. Gary Fannin, myself, Ed Haslam, William Madsen Law, Wayne Madsen, Bar McClellan, Larry Rivera, Roger Stone, and John Barber, who has a film on the second assassination of JFK by the American media that is going to be shown at 7 p.m. Sunday night. And after the showing, those of us who are there live, Gary Fannin, Wayne Madsen, Bar McClellan, and William Madsen Law, and I will participate in a question and answer session with John Barber discussing his film. And that conversation among us will be played as the final event on Monday at the conclusion of the conference, which begins at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern. If you go to the next slide, we'll see the schedule. 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern, Roger Stone, his presentation on JFK, the man, the president, the murder. Roger, of course, is the author of a book, Who Killed JFK? The Case Against LBJ, which is very, very good. And, of course, we all know that Lyndon was the pivotal player, that it was he who sent his chief administrative assistant, Cliff Carter, down to Dallas to make sure all the arrangements were in place for the assassination. It was he who talked JFK into going to Dallas. It was he who forced himself on the ticket in L.A. in 1960 to be in the position to ascend to the presidency when JFK would be taken out. He astonished Bobby, who came by with a pro forma invitation to serve as Jack's running mate, after Jack had already invited Stuart Symington to perform that role, but gave him overnight to think about it. They were dumbfounded when Lyndon insisted he be on the ticket since he wasn't on their long list, much less their short. But he threatened to expose that JFK was suffering from Addison's disease, wasn't expected to live a long, healthy life, that he'd had dalliances with beautiful women, some of whom were spies for East Germany, information provided to him by J. Edgar Hoover. And Lyndon asserted if he were not on the ticket, then any legislative proposal sent down from the White House would be dead on arrival because he, as majority leader of the Senate, would bottle them up. When a wealthy supporter of Lyndon burst into the Johnson REIT, angry, cursing, swearing because LBJ was going to help JFK become president, Bobby Baker took him into a bedroom and explained what they had in mind. He came out all smiles and said he thought that was an excellent plan. Bobby would subsequently declare that JFK would not live out his term and would die a violent death, which, of course, they set about arranging to be the case. Ed Haslam, who speaks following Roger Stone, is an expert on New Orleans and activities there. His book, Dr. Mary's Monkey, is a discussion of the events in New Orleans during the summer where Lee Oswald, David Ferry, Judith Ferry, under the supervision of Mary Sherman, worked on the developing of a rapid-acting cancer to be used as a bioweapon. They used to joke about Mary Ferry and Very as being the participants there. Ed Haslam has done a brilliant job of vetting Judith Very Baker's story about her activities in New Orleans, visiting all the locations, traveling the trolley routes, everything else, doing as thorough a job as one could imagine to vet it. There'll be a 15-minute break, and then Wayne Madsen at 11:15 PT, 2:15 Eastern. We'll talk about Raphael Cruz, Lee Oswald, and New Orleans, where we here ourselves have verified that Donald Trump's assertion that Ted Cruz's father was in New Orleans with Lee Oswald is completely accurate, that he was captured in that famous photograph in front of the trademark while Lee was handing out fair play for Cuba flyers in order to sheep dip, give him a new persona, where I was simply astonished to discover that on the cover of my very first book on JFK Assassination Science 1998, where I'd used a color photograph taken by a Dallas photographer in the upper right-hand corner, who should be there but Raphael Cruz, standing beside Antonio Veciana, the founder of Alpha 66, perhaps the most vicious of all the anti-Castro organizations. The improbability of Raphael being at those two key locations at those key moments in history and not have been on the fringe of the assassination is approximately zero. Gary, if you proceed to the next slide.
Yeah, I just want to comment on Ed Haslam. It's because of Ed Haslam that you can believe in Judy Baker's books, because he is the most meticulous researcher of them all.
Yeah, he's very, very good. He did a thorough job.
Judy turned out to be the technician that he was looking for, which linked all the players in the scheme of the, to weaponize the virus. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as John Barber, what he has is a more revised edition of the Garrison tapes, which is on our top 10 videos of all time. And Larry, I know, loves the Garrison tapes.
Oh, well,
that's what John Barber's all about.
All-time favorite.
And of course, Nigel Turner also thoroughly vetted Judith Very Baker before introducing Part 8 of The Men Who Killed Kennedy, The Love Affair, as the sequel to The Smoking Guns, which featured many of my colleagues and collaborators on the forensic and medical evidence, where I addressed the 15 indication of Secret Service complicity in setting him up, and preceding the guilty men about the role of Lyndon Johnson in the assassination. Then at 12:15, we have Barr McClellan, the author of Blood, Money, Power, where Barr worked in the law firm of Joe Clark, the most powerful attorney in Texas, who had Lyndon as a client and who was involved both in planning the assassination and also the cover-up. Then there's a 30-minute break before at 1:45, Gary Fannin comes on. to talk about ballistics and pathological findings in the framing of Lee Harvey Oswald. No doubt he'll talk about the impossibility of the shots where Carlos Hathcock, a gunnery sergeant, the best sniper in the Marine Corps, attempted to replicate the shooting attributed to Lee Oswald back at Quantico and found it impossible to pull off, very reasonably inferring if he, the best shot in the Marine Corps, couldn't do it, then this guy Oswald, who was a mediocre shot at best, certainly could not have done it. Then I come on at 2:45 to talk about how and why the Zapruder film was revised using multiple forms of evidence, internal evidence, inconsistencies between the films, external evidence, so witness evidence, and a whole host of others. I don't think there's going to be any doubt remaining in anyone's mind about how and why they had to revise the Zapruder film, and where Larry has made some splendid additional contributions here in his transcription of the interviews that Fred Newcomb had done with the 4 motorcycle escort officers and their supervisor, Stavis Ellis. And here, after a break, at 4 p.m., we have Larry Rivera talking about Doorman, the proof of Oswald's innocence, certifying in a definitive fashion that the Oswald Innocence Campaign, which is predicated on the premise that Lee Oswald could not have been the lone demented shooter or even one of the gunmen, because he was actually captured in a famous photograph taken by AP photographer James Ike Alchins at the very time where he was standing in the doorway. Gary will nail that down with brilliant work, which we've seen here in anticipation. Then at 5 p.m., we have William Law, who's interviewed most of the witnesses, all the ones he could get a hold of, and that's quite a large number, who are involved in one way or another at Bethesda, Parkland, or elsewhere. And then for the finale, it's going to be the question and answer session after the movie with John Barber. So if you go to jfkbirthday.com, you'll get all the specifics. It turns out to be, in order to cover the expenses, that Lauren Fenton is producing this on a pay-per-view basis, where for the cost of a meal at a mid-level restaurant, or for 2 at a less, $30, you get access to the program for 90 days. So you don't need to worry about whether or not you catch it all the first time around. You're going to have it available to you for the next 6 months, 180 days, 6 months, 180 days. So you can bring in the family, bring in friends, go back over, view again and again and again the parts that interest you the most. And I think this is actually extraordinary, even historic, because it means you can have a seminar on the assassination of JFK, which you can view in the comfort of your own home with your own friends and family. Treat yourself to snacks, drinks, lunch, whatever in the process. I think it's actually a very important opportunity that every serious American ought to consider taking advantage of on this unique occasion.
That's right.
Well, isn't that what people do when they watch the new JFK show?
But they don't have to pay $30 to do it.
No, they don't.
You know, this is Memorial Day, so people are doing barbecues, you know, and watching the this event on Lorian's pay-per-view there.
I think she really had a good idea, and that was a stroke of genius, recognizing that his 100th birthday fell on Memorial Day, that it was a perfect opportunity to organize a symposium of this caliber. And I think she's done an extremely good job about going about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's not a lot of JFK stuff typically in May.
You're right. I was going to say, she's all by herself. She's got the entire market.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, it normally clusters in November in relation to the observance of the assassination. I think this is a very smart move, highly intelligent, and I hope that it's going to draw a huge audience, because the American people are entitled to the truth about the assassination of our 35th president, which the government manifestly has been unwilling to share with the public.
Well, I think also the coverage that Rents gave her last night is probably going to attract a lot of people that perhaps maybe people that had never really gotten into this before. So we'll see what happens.
And I see Gary has a special here that he wants to add, which is perfect because we have the time to do it. Gary, go for it.
Yeah, we've got this. Arlene Mosby is a very, very interesting female here. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. And I just want everyone to comment on this. And let's see what she has to say about old Lee.
Lee Oswald struck me as a young boy full of bitterness and hate. Someone not too well educated, certainly not a brilliant person. I would say he was extremely superficial, very immature, and very misinformed. He told me why he had decided to leave the United States and give up his American citizenship and apply for citizenship in the Soviet Union. He said he had indoctrinated himself for 5 years through reading books about Marx, but he actually knew very little about communism, and he couldn't apply what he had read to the actual life in Moscow around him. It was as if he were quoting just sentences from Pravda and Izvestia without really knowing what they meant. When he spoke, he held his chin very stiffly, and his mouth was tight and thin. He spoke of the United States, the hostility that he felt for his country was quite evident. Afterward, I remember thinking what an unbalanced, extremely emotionally immature fellow he was. In fact, when other correspondents in Moscow asked me how the interview had gone, I had described him as being, well, he was just a little weird.
I love this. Crisis actors back in the day, in 1963, huh?
This is very embarrassing. This woman is obviously a shill. Judith's book, Me and Lee, puts a lie to virtually everything she says here. Many other sources. I mean, after all, this guy was recruited by the Office of Naval Intelligence when he was undergoing recruit training in San Diego. He was stationed at Sugi, our most secure base in the American military, the location from which the U-2 overflights were taking place. He defected to the Soviet Union at the request of the CIA to provide them with information about the U-2 flight so they could bring it down and subvert the summit meeting between Nikita Khrushchev and Dwight D. Eisenhower. When he returned to the United States, he was greeted by a front company of the State Department that gave him money to relocate, wasn't treated or prosecuted as some kind of traitor, wound up in New Orleans while Marina was in Dallas. She would be living with Ruth and Michael Payne and would even arrange conveniently for him to have a job at the Book Depository building about 2 weeks before the assassination. When Wagner Carr undertook his own investigation, he discovered that Lee was working as an informant for the FBI. He had informant number 179, was being paid $200 a month right up to the time of the assassination. I dare say no one could pull off all of these feats without having a high degree of intellectual acumen and practical skills in dealing with people, and that virtually everything she claimed about Lee Oswald is contradicted by other more reliable evidence.
Yeah, what you say, Larry, about Aline?
That's obviously a crisis actor, you know, doing exactly what they do, and where obviously, you know, the networks, you know, have the full attention networks. And this is how the legend of Lee, the malcontent, was propagated. I mean,
he called poor Lee every name in the book for like a whole minute.
I know. That was kind of overkill, wasn't it? I mean,
it really was. At the very end.
At first, okay, but then, you know, it's kind of obvious. You know, if you're a rational, you know, thinking
and what are her qualifications for rendering these judgments? Is she a student of political philosophy? Is she a student of Karl Marx? What does she know about communism? What's her background? What's her education? I'd say a lot of those adjectives actually fit her far better, more accurately than they do Lee Oswald.
Really?
I would agree with that. So, all All right, we've got another minute and 57 here that we can comment on. Are y'all ready, fellas? This is something to do with the
Oh, the
Mauser.
Mauser.
Yeah, the Mauser.
I always love that one.
Our fourth question for tonight. Was Oswald's rifle fired from the building? To answer this one,
Hold on.
placed major reliance on physical.
Hold on.
Got
Let
it
me.
now.
Yeah, I got to turn the volume up. I'll start it over. Here we go.
Okay. We come now to our fourth question for tonight. Was Oswald's rifle fired from the building? To answer this one, the commission placed major reliance on physical evidence found within the building. 3 shells, later identified as fired from Oswald's rifle, were found 42 minutes after the shots. 10 minutes later, a rifle was discovered.
The rifle was found on the 6th floor, back near the stairway, between some cartons, by Deputy Constable Seymour Weitzman. And from that episode came a description that has plagued the Warren Commission account for years. The identification of it as a German Mauser. Eddie Barker asked Constable Weitzman what happened.
To be very frankly, I stumbled over it two times, not knowing it was there.
Just went right by.
Went right by. And Mr. Boone was climbing on top, and I was down on my knees looking, and I moved the box, and he moved the carton, and there it was. And he in turn hollered that we'd found the rifle.
Well, when did you first get a full view of the gun?
When the crime lab brought the gun out, after they had gone over it, well, I could see portions of the gun while they were doing partial investigation of it there in the building.
What kind of gun did you think it was?
To my sorrow, I looked at it, and it looked like a Mauser, which I said it was, but I said the wrong one because it just at a glance I saw the Mauser action, and I don't know, it just came on words. It's a German Mauser, which it wasn't. It's an Italian type gun. But from a glance, it's hard to describe, and that's all I saw. It was at a glance. I was mistaken, and it was proven that my statement was a mistake, but it was an honest mistake.
Wow, looks like he's under a little duress there, doesn't it, fellas?
Well, we have multiple sources who identified the weapon they found initially as a German Mauser. I don't think there's any serious doubt about it. The Mauser actually would have been a highly reliable and appropriate weapon for a sniper to use for an assassination, unlike the Mannlicher Carcano, which was so unreliable as to be characterized as the humanitarian rifle in World War II for never actually harming anyone on purpose. So they had a paper trail tying Oswald to the Mannlicher Carcano, not to a Mauser. So they had a bit of a two-step here to conceal that the weapon they actually found wasn't the weapon that they wanted to attribute to Lee Oswald having used.
Yeah, the Mauser would have actually worked.
Yeah.
Right. You know, but the very first reports were a British Enfield 303. Okay, and that's exactly the rifle that we found at Bill Wesley Fraser's house. You know, so you know, it's sort of all these transformations there on the weapon that was found up there.
Yeah, it is remarkable. I'm convinced, by the way, that when they moved all the evidence to Washington, D.C., they made a substitution of the Mannlicher Carcano that had purportedly been found in the book depository for the one that had been used by Nestor Tony Escadro to fire 3 shots from the Dow Tex, so that they'd actually have a weapon that had been used in the assassination in place of the one that had not been used. In fact, was really in such difficult condition, experts refused to even test fire it.
All right, we just got
to adjust the site exactly. And they had to put shims in there so that the FBI could test the Mannlicher Carcano because it was so out of sight, out of alignment.
All right, so we've just got a few grains of sand left, fellas. This whole thing's an hour long, but this is at the 6th floor museum, and we've got our guy Clint Hill still maintaining. And so let's just take a look.
In the next week or two, we don't have an air date yet. And Stephen Fagan, our associate curator, is recording also for our oral history program, which now totals over 800 people. While we're chatting, the biographies of our guests will appear on the screens behind us. Also some photographs. Ones of the Kennedys come from the National Archives and White House photographers. And the photographs of the Kennedys that you'll see in Dallas come from the Sixth Floor Museum's collections. Let's see here. We'll also have a Q&A session. Many of you have filled out the forms already. If you don't have a pencil or pen to write with, hold up your hand and our people will come around and give you a pencil to write with. I have some prepared questions up. I'm sitting there waving.
So anyway, y'all get the idea. Talk about a shill fest here. So
that's the late great Gary Mack.
Yeah,
former curator of the Sixth Floor Museum,
and Clint Hill. So yeah, I wanted to play a little bit more, but it'd probably take a little too long. So
yeah, Clint went over to the dark side. He and Jack White did a lot of good work on the Mormon photograph and identified Badge Man. I think he just had a persona they thought they could use to benefit if he were moved to the other side and manage the Sixth Floor Museum and uphold the single bullet theory and the rest of the Warren Commission's nonsense about how the assassination was carried out.
Absolutely. So, all right, last words, Don?
Yeah. Next week, I hope to have some clips from the Mark Lane and Joseph Ball and a couple other guys from the Warren Commission debate. It's on our boy Dave Von Peen's channel, if anybody wants to go listen to that.
Okay, I'll keep my bell handy. Larry?
No, we'll also probably talk a little bit about the conference that's going down on Monday. And so Wednesday we'll probably, chat a little bit about
how things went at the conference. Yeah. So Jim, you want to go ahead and close us out?
Well, I think everyone has a unique opportunity here to have a broad and deep introduction to the latest research on JFK on Memorial Day, beginning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Check it out. Go to jfkbirthday.com and determine whether this is or not this is something you don't want to miss.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone, gentlemen, for being on the show tonight. This is the new JFK show, number 149. And be sure to ring our bell over there at the conference, and we're well represented with the new JFK show over there. All right, we'll see you next week.
This is a unique little book covering a topic that is much overdue for teaching children about our environment. The title is Funny Clouds, A Chemtrails Tale, written by Raphael O'Neill, illustrated by Sean Gautreaux, and printed by an Amazon company called Great Space. The story is about little Marie and her mom, who go outside to plant a tree. When they finish, little Marie looks up towards the sky to see strange clouds sprayed by jet aircraft. The story is told in rhyme and prose that can inform but also entertain a young reader. I recommend this book because it has an optimistic message without instilling fear. The story ends on a positive note about how responsible people will ultimately succeed in stopping chemtrails by spreading awareness and taking political action. This little book is a valuable tool for adults to educate their children on an extremely important environmental issue. Informed citizens know that chemtrails were described in House Resolution 2977 as an exotic weapon back in 2001. Concerned parents have a right to protect their children from dangerous chemical experiments in our sky.
If you're interested in this book, go to patriotradiobooks.com. patriotradiobooks.com. There's a new bookstore in town.